The following is a paid message brought to you by the TCG.
Hello, my name is Tom Rogan. I'm the moderator of the McLaughlin Group, and today I have the fortune of being joined by Neil Hare, the President and CEO of Global Vision Communications, and by Adrian Elrod, who is a Democratic strategist. And Neil, why don't you talk us through in terms of why you're here today and representing Taiwan civil government?
We do represent the Taiwan civil government, which is an educational and advocacy group based in Taiwan that supports a much closer relationship with the United States. They're a trusted partner on the ground for economic cooperation and trade, military cooperation, and also on the international stage. And so they've been working for over 10 years to foster this stronger relationship. They have over 60,000 members in Taiwan. And it's important to realize that Taiwan is not a recognized country. The United States doesn't recognize Taiwan. The G7 or the G20 don't recognize it. The United Nations doesn't recognize Taiwan. So that what they're trying to do is move towards some international recognition, but really to create a much stronger relationship with the United States that currently exists.
And Adrian, would you say that there is a consistency really in American politics in terms of support for Taiwan traditionally?
Yes, I mean, I think there's a consistency certainly in terms of supporting Taiwan. But to your point, we have never, the United States has never recognized Taiwan as a country. For many, many different political reasons. But yes, there's a consistency in foreign policy when it comes to how Taiwan is treated by the United States government.
And Neil, on that point, American politicians might say that the risks of that recognition are too high in terms of China. What would your response be to that?
Well, I think, first of all, China, the issue of China and Trump's relationship with China is, I think, going to be the defining relationship of his presidency. We've been talking about Russia a lot, but I think when it comes down to it, it's going to be China. So it is, anything we do regarding Taiwan is going to have an impact on the Chinese relationship. And the closer we get to Taiwan, I think the angrier China may get.
Right.
We recently just passed the Taiwan Travel Act that we can talk about, and which facilitates travel between officials of both countries. China immediately engaged in military exercises, naval exercises in the Straits of Taiwan.
And we have seen in recent months increasingly robust Chinese actions in terms of changing passenger flight routes, these military exercises. Do you think there is a deliberate pressure on Taiwan trying to send a message to President Trump?
Absolutely. I think they're flexing their muscles. China is flexing their muscles with flyovers and the naval exercises. My favorite recent story is China attacked the Gap for releasing a T-shirt that didn't have Taiwan as part of the map of China in there, and the Gap capitulated, understandably. But we as a country can't be backing down every time China flexes its muscles.
And Adrian, obviously you're a Democrat, but you have seen President Trump. Recently the White House came out with quite a robust statement condemning what they saw as the Chinese Communist Party demanding certain elements of speech. I mean, do you think, though, that the administration, with the focus on North Korea, might be scared to some degree about upsetting Beijing, and that might affect Taiwan policy?
Absolutely, and I think this is exactly why you have seen, regardless of being a Democrat or a Republican, I think this is why you've seen past presidents be very careful when it comes to how they treat Taiwan, right? Because there is that potential of really angering China. China considers Taiwan to be a part of its country.
Right.
The Taiwanese do not consider themselves to be part of China. So that is where you have this sort of adversarial situation.
Right. And Neil, in terms of the sort of historical context here, there is that perhaps compelling argument to make, I would assume from your point, that Taiwan is a democracy, a small nation, standing up to against, say, a much larger authoritarian nation, that Americans might find alignment with that moral message.
Well, I think that they do, but I think it is important to look at the history. If we go back 70 years, that the United States won World War II, and we conquered Japan, and Japan was in control of Taiwan at that particular time. And there was actually a treaty, the Treaty of San Francisco in 1952, where the United States took over control of Taiwan at that time. And what we did was we put in Chiang Kai-shek as our friendly leader on the ground, and he ruled the country for 25 years. But in the 70s, when we started doing opening China, we passed the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act and created this one China policy, which is where things have gotten really muddled from that point on.
Right. And what would you say in terms of priorities for Taiwan in terms of defense exports from the United States?
Well, we just last year, Congress passed a $1.4 billion arms package where we sold some planes and missiles and other items to Taiwan. So we're continuing to say we will defend you, and this is back to that 79 Act, and we're showing it by giving them or selling them weapons, which Taiwan wants and desperately needs.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that, doesn't it? In terms of what would you say what is the sale factor to Americans in terms of your argument for a closer Taiwan-U.S. relationship?
Well, I think I want to put it in the global context and the foreign policy and diplomacy. There's been a lot going on with trade recently and the tariffs that President Trump was talking about with China, and a lot of people, free traders didn't like that. But you have all these pieces on the board. You have the North Korea denuclearization talks, which just fell apart today. You have trade with China. You have the steel and the aluminum imports, and you have to put it all in that context. And the closer we get to Taiwan, the harder things get with China.
And Adrian, what do you think would be, in the next 5 years? I mean, do you think President Trump will stay on this present approach of trying to maintain good relations with Beijing, but obviously a close relationship with Taiwan, or do you see things changing?
I think it's too hard to be able to predict at this point. I do think that past presidents have had this challenge, most certainly, given the fact that you just made, which is the closer we get to showing stronger diplomatic relations with Taiwan, the more we anger China. And our relationship with Beijing, as difficult as it is, it's still very important to maintain a positive relationship with that country for many, many reasons, for reasons on trade, for reasons on foreign policy, for national security reasons. We've got to maintain good relations with China, and that's where every past president, I think, has become stumped. They want to help democratic Taiwan, but at the same time, they don't want to anger Beijing.
Neil, why don't you come in there? Yeah,
I would. I'd like to see a much more muscular foreign policy from the United States. I think actually President Trump was on the right path by the tariffs, even though I'm a free trader. I think he was saying, we're not letting you dump steel into the United States anymore. We're not going to let you keep stealing our intellectual property. We're not going to let you saber rattle and scare us. And so I think what a great way to further that is, hey, we're going to be more friendly with Taiwan. Let's send a naval aircraft carrier into Taiwan and have a port of call. Let's sell them more arms, and let's see what China does. I don't believe that they're going to stand up to us.
And there is a broader context here, isn't there, in terms of US-China tensions in the South China Sea, China's militarization of islands there. And so potentially President Trump might come to that viewpoint that in some sense Taiwan as a friend of the United States and China behaving increasingly as an adversary, that actually there might be more of a willingness to take some of those risks, as you suggest.
I think so. I mean, nobody wants to see a military engagement with China. I don't think anybody wants to see that. But I also think the way China plays the game is, unless you stand up and show that you're willing to be aggressive with them, then they're going to take. They're just going to keep taking and taking and taking. Literally, for 25 years, they've been stealing our intellectual property. We've done nothing about it. Dumping steel, building up their military in an unbelievable way, going into Africa, Middle East, very quietly, buying up the United States. They own a huge part of our debt and other parts of the United States. And what have we done? And very little.
Adrian, why do you think Taiwan has the support that it does on Capitol Hill?
Well, first of all, as a former chief of staff on Capitol Hill, I will say that the people of Taiwan, TECRO at the time, was the sort of entity that was representing Taiwan on Capitol Hill. I'm not sure if they still are, but they did a very good job of reaching out. They sponsored trips for chiefs of staff to go to Taiwan so you could truly understand firsthand what that country was facing, what their priorities were, what they wanted out of the United States, which of course was an arms deal and recognition of being a standalone country. But, I think, look, Taiwan, to your point, is a democracy, and they are standing up to big red China. They are fearful every day that something for their safety. that China could fire off a missile at them.
Right.
So I think the United States is trying to maintain that balance of supporting a democratic country against a communist regime, but also knowing that they've got to maintain diplomatic relations with China.
Let me just jump in there. I mean, it is a democracy in the sense that they have elections, but a lot of those, a lot of countries have elections that aren't necessarily
Correct.
legitimate.
Right.
Saddam Hussein used to have elections,
Yes.
and he
Right.
won by 96% of the vote.
Right.
amazingly.
98%, I think.
Yeah, I think it was
right?
98%. And it's important to realize that politically there's a lot of folks in Taiwan who are pro-China. They have a lot of support, which we don't want that, and that's why the TCG is so important as a potential partner, because they are very pro-U.S. They don't make any bones about that. They don't hide that. They want a much closer relationship, and I think we just have to be careful to recognize that there is a pro-China faction in Taiwan, and China's in there. They're doing the same thing, buying up companies, taking a lot of the young workers and giving them better deals in China, and exerting their influence and
information messaging of the time many Americans will be.
Right, and these days you don't have to do it militarily anymore. You can buy companies, you can do it on social media, you can you take the workers, the human capital, and you take them to your country, and all of a sudden you've taken over and you didn't have to fire one bullet.
Neil, let me ask you something I asked Adrian earlier. How do you see President Trump's relationship with China in relation to the North Korea process affecting Taiwan?
Well, I think he almost bet his whole presidency on this North Korea deal. I mean, he did, I think, declare victory a little bit early, just on getting the meeting. I'm not saying what would come out of the meeting. I think it was a little, mission accomplished kind of thing, and he's got to get it done. And I don't think he can get it done without China. North Korea is a proxy state for China. That's the only partner, the only friend that they have left.
Yep.
And if he doesn't get something done, something that he can say he got done with North Korea, which everybody wants, by the way. We all would love to see no more nukes on the Korean Peninsula. But if he doesn't get that done, it's going to be real tough for him when the re-election comes around.
But isn't there an argument then some people would say, well, you need to be closer to Beijing to get that done?
You can, but again, I think the way they think in China, and President Xi thinks, is you have to be tough.
Right.
You can't capitulate, or you're going to get nothing out of it.
So you actually think potentially the way to get that deal is to actually be tougher on China, to say we'll impose costs rather than give benefits?
I think so. I think so, 100%.
Adrian, if we look at Taiwan in terms of the sort of, obviously an export market, high-tech sector there, do you think there is a prospect going forward? Does the U.S. economy, obviously politicians on all sides are trying to focus on the STEM process, as we talk about so much, an acronym. Do you think there is an opportunity there in terms of possibly, dramatically increased trade?
Sure. No, I think that's one of the great benefits that Taiwan has going for it, right? Is their tech sector, and I think obviously that's a win-win for the United States and for Taiwan. But again, to your point, there are so many other factors withstanding our relationship with Taiwan that come into play here. The North Korea talks, the need for China to be on board with ensuring that those talks get reinstated, that they don't end with what happened today. So I think there's a lot to be seen.
And Neil, that $65 billion in two-way trade. Obviously, a lot of Taiwan, cell phones. We all love our sort of smart cell phones. That's actually, what would you say on that issue?
Yeah, well, I do. I love that stat that 36 Taiwanese companies contributed to the manufacturing of the iPhone 8, which is not bad. I mean, let's remember, Taiwan, they only have 25 million people in the country. It's a small island nation, yet it's the 11th largest economy in the world. It's our 9th largest trading partner and 7th in terms of agricultural trade. They're a powerhouse in aviation, electronics, chemical manufacturing, energy. So it's a huge economy and a huge partner, and I think that is another opportunity. I mean, let's get a free trade agreement together with Taiwan, and let's ramp those numbers up. I mean, they would like it. The TCG is very heavily focused on business and the economy and trade, and that'd be another way to show China, hey, let's ramp up our trade with Taiwan.
What would need to happen to see that taking place in the next couple of years?
Well, I think we could look at a free trade agreement. I mean, we backed out of TPP, I guess, but maybe we may be going back in. I don't know. But
and President Trump has said that he wants individual agreements, so that might align
Right, exactly. So let's do a bilateral agreement. Let's open trade up further. Let's facilitate it. Let's, maybe add a whole new visa structure to allow Taiwan business to more easily. Exactly. And let's just move forward. I think you got to show that.
So what would be your sort of articulation of the bumper sticker, or slightly bigger bumper sticker argument for Taiwan's civil government in terms of priorities?
Well, I would say closer ties with the United States. The Taiwan civil government would love to see an immigration facilitation. Let's go one step further than the Taiwan Travel Act and allow some other heightened level of ability to immigrate into the United States or come back and forth and do business. I think that would be the huge win for TCG.
And Adrian, as someone who has visited Taiwan, what would you say is the bumper sticker for Americans in terms of the evolving relationship?
Well, I actually think I personally enjoyed just visiting the country itself. There's a beautiful national park that we traveled to. Taipei is a fascinating city in itself. But I think, to your point, in broader speaking terms, free trade, some sort of like extended visa waiver program, and obviously a continuing relationship where we can sell arms to Taiwan.
Well, Neil and Adrian, I think that we've got through a number of issues there. Thank you very much for joining us in this segment. And Adrian, we appreciate it as well in terms of someone who's visited.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was terrific.
Great.